Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio, where we provide actionable health information on a week-to-week basis that can help you improve your life. Feel free to head over to justinhealth.com, where we have various opt-in video series on more in-depth health topics such as female hormones, thyroid, and gut health. Also, while you're there, feel free and schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or my colleagues. We're available worldwide to provide natural health support for any of your major health issues. Again, welcome to the podcast and enjoy the show. And we are live. It's Dr. J here in the house. Evan Brand, how are we doing today, my man?
I'm doing great. We're diving into like my favorite episode ever. This is like your favorite jam too, Adaptogenic Herbs. I'm not going to say probably. I'm going to say we definitely could not work as much and as hard as we do if we were not taking adaptogens. Now, maybe you've got some secret sauce behind the scenes that you could continue working as hard as you do, but for me, adaptogens are the thing that keeps me going and that keep me feeling refreshed, even in the most difficult of cases. You're reviewing labs all day. You've got to focus. You got to think about the symptoms that the client's reporting to you, and you got to make the accurate protocol. You can't slip up on dosing. You got to make sure you gauge it all right. I mean, what we do is brain intensive. So for us, I think adaptogens are like essential, but for other people too, these are very, very amazing compounds that should be worked into your life and your protocol wherever you can.
100%, man. So there's different families of adaptogens. You know, there are some that have immune modulating benefits. There are some that have stress modulating benefits. And then there are some that are going to have sex hormone modulating benefits. So we kind of use them in different criteria. So the ones that help manage stress are going to be things like ginseng or ashwagandha, and they're really going to help modulate cortisol. And the big thing about adaptogens that I love is it helps modulate the perception of stress. So much of stress is perception-based, where if you internalize something as being stressful, you make more of a negative hormonal response to that stress, where if you can perceive that stress as being less threatening, your hormones respond accordingly. So that's part of the benefit of adaptogens. You can do it with meditation and mindset as you perceive stress differently, but you can also modulate your body using herbs to have a similar effect. And guess what? If you combine the two, it's even better.
So give us an example. Like, are you talking, let's say somebody cut you off on the highway and that really would have pissed you off before, but
Yes.
now you're just like, oh, you know what? They're in a rush.
You're just able to keep your cool a little bit better, right? It just makes it a little bit harder for you to fully lose your SHIT, if you will. All right.
Yes.
It makes it harder for you to lose it. All right. And that's nice. People are in stressful environments, work and stuff. Everyone wants to keep their composure, especially if you're dealing with your kids. You don't want to yell at your kids and all that stuff, right? So you want to be able to keep your cool. And so ashwagandha is one of those things that I use daily. It helps modulate the immune system, but it also helps change and help me deal with stress better. And again, ashwagandha literally is Sanskrit. It means to impart the strength of the horse. It's kind of a cool little saying there. And a lot of adaptogens, they've been used for a long time, and they kind of have a little bit of a saying around that, imparting energy and strength and stabilization.
Yeah, so ashwagandha is something that has benefits with the adrenal system too. So when you're talking stress, obviously there's this connection between the brain and the adrenals. And what you're saying is when you're using these adaptogens, it's almost like you can sort of either short circuit, or maybe the better word is down regulate that stressful connection, meaning like that guy on the highway who cut you off. Before, your fuse would have been so short that brain is going to go alert, alert, alert. The amygdala, the fight or flight system sets off, and then boom, you get a big old shot of cortisol. But in the research we've looked at, ashwagandha literally can help stabilize that cortisol response to where you might not get as much of a sharp hit of cortisol. It'll still happen. It's not like you're going to be sedated, and if somebody puts a gun to you, you can't get scared and run. It's not that. It's just that it's going to help blunt an excess response of hormones.
100%. And that's really, really important. That's very important. And then, of course, there are going to be just things like ginseng adaptogens, whether it's Panic ginseng, American ginseng, or red ginseng, or Korean ginseng. They're going to just help us deal with stress as well, kind of similar in that adaptogenic quality. And they're also typically what they're doing is they're modulating cortisol output. They're modulating HPA axis. And of course, when you modulate HPA axis, remember that means hypothalamus pituitary, aka your brain. the A part is your adrenals. So that feedback loop from the brain to the adrenals is modulated. So one, it's going to make sure that we don't over yell or over signal stress hormone production, but it's also going to help us when we made stress hormones. It's going to provide what's called a negative feedback loop back to the brain that's going to allow us to come down from that stress versus stay chronically elevated. It's like the air conditioning comes on, it hits 70 degrees, right? It lowers that temperature, but imagine the air conditioning continuing to stay on until it's at 60. It's like, well, hey, I don't want it to go that cold. I only want it to stop at 70. So think of that's kind of what your stress response is. We produce those stress hormones, but we just keep ratcheting it up above and beyond what's needed for that moment.
Yeah, I think another way to say it is you've just lost that homeostasis, and adaptogens can help you to find that balance more. So, for example, if something frazzles you, here's an interesting thing. I think people relate to stories, right? So, my wife took my daughter Summer to Whole Foods last week, and we give my daughter adaptogens all the time, just different liquid tinctures with blends. We've probably got her on, I don't know, 5 or 10 different things, reishi mushroom and astragalus and licorice and eleuthero and cordyceps and all of it, right? And so normally if she heard a very, very loud, startling sound, she'd get startled from it. And in this case, it was the fire alarm that went off. And my wife was like, wow, you know something crazy? She goes, I know these herbs are working for Summer because if something were that loud before we had her on all those supplements, she'd cover her ears. And she'd be like, oh my God, what is this loud sound? But instead, the fire alarm goes off and all she says is, Mommy, what's that? And just super chill. She didn't overreact. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't cover her ears. Here the fire alarm's just blaring, and she was super cool. So like I said, it's not that it's numbing you. It's just that it's going to allow you to not have a big response. Think of another example. When I was out at this piece of property, looking at this piece of land, I met the builder out there, and there was a dump truck behind us. And you know how when the dump trucks open up the back and they let all the gravel out, and then the dump truck door slams? He jumped so hard, and I kind of joke with my wife afterwards, like, man, he needs some adaptogens. He overreacted. He acted like he was getting shot, but instead it was just a loud sound. So that's kind of a sign. If you're somebody listening, how do I know my HPA system is dysfunctional? Well, if you're overreacting to things, like you said, you're getting mad at your kids easily, your fuse is short, or you have a very, very sensitive startle reflex, like a loud sound, oh my God, your heart's pounding, you need some adaptogenic herbs.
Exactly. And David Winston, I think he has a book on this. It's literally called Adaptogenic Herbs. It's actually online free. You can totally get it. There's 15 recognized adaptogens that he has in that book. I mean, some of the big ones are ginseng, ashwagandha, Asian ginseng, astragalus, and cordyceps are great because they modulate the immune system. Eleuthero, holy basil. Licorice is actually considered an adaptogen. Reishi, rhodiola, schisandra, shilajit. These are different adaptogens that have kind of been well known. So this book is excellent because it really talks about, a lot of the science behind these adaptogens. And really, to kind of summarize it, the science comes down to this: immune modulating effects, stress modulating effects, brain communication to organ, to adrenal or thyroid effects. So better communication from the brain to the organs, better homeostasis and adaptation to stress, immune modulation, and then also sex hormone modulation. So for guys and women, there's certain herbs that we'll use to help reestablish cycle communication in women, or help with progesterone, or help modulate estrogen receptor sites. And then guys too, there's ones that we'll use to help modulate LH and testosterone secretion as well. So there's different ones that we use for stress, mood, sex hormones, and then of course, when you modulate the stress and the sex hormones, guess what happens? You start sleeping better, which then feeds back into the rest and repair, and then your hormones aren't as stressed. Therefore, the adaptogens have even a better modulating effect because your hormones and your stress is less off kilter, right? It's more balanced because the sleep is already stabilizing you.
Yeah, that's what I love about ashwagandha, for example, is that you could use it during the day to help with stressful events, but you could also use it at night. So I'll take a shot of it, or if I'm using a capsule, I'll do some during the day, and then I'll also take 1 or 2 doses of it before bed. And I tell you, I wake up a lot more refreshed when I have that in my system.
Yeah, and again, like the Russians did a lot of research in the mid-50s and 60s on adaptogens. It's pretty cool. one of the Russian research scientists, he kind of described an adaptogen like this. This is what the definition was, and this is going to be available, I think, in Winston's book called Adaptogenic Herbs. He said, they must be innocuous. They must cause minimal disorders in a physiological function of an organism. They must have a non-specific action and usually have a normalizing action irrespective of the direction of someone's pathological state. That's really important. So someone could be moving towards a disease state, and it's still going to have a modulating benefit, which is really cool.
I love that. That's a nice, elegant statement. And people may think, well, if these things are so awesome, then, why aren't more people talking about it? Why aren't doctors talking about it? Well, in general, as you mentioned, in the 50s and 60s, Russia's doing all this research. But in America, there's not any money in this because, you and I, we've got our own formulas, which we'll eventually talk about and plug and hope that you all can experiment with. But the money is not in a bottle of rhodiola that we may sell to you for $20. Right? Like there's just not that huge profit margin incentive, and you can't patent these things too because they're herbs. So when you can't patent something, then you can't excessively mark it up and make a ton of money like you can with the pharmaceuticals, for example.
100%, 110%. So there's less money there.
It is that way.
Yeah, there's less money there, and of course, when the education is primarily driven by mainstream companies, if there's no money there, you're just not going to get the education on it. So the cool thing about the internet and podcast and YouTube is we can provide a lot of these videos, and it's easy. We just do a recording and it's out. We don't have to go through a big publishing process and have everything all, go through a publisher and an editor, all that. We can just put this information out there raw in the flesh, and you guys can enjoy it and digest it even live. We have people on YouTube listening live right now, which is pretty awesome.
Do you want to tell any stories about your use with adaptogens? Have you experimented with different things for different issues with mood or sleep or stress?
Yeah, so in my line, I have a product called Ashwagandha Supreme. So ashwagandha is going to be one of my favorite ones. I find it really helps with stress and sleep and really helps modulate my stress response. Like I find out if I get in an argument with someone, if I just hit some ashwagandha within 20 or 30 minutes, I'm adapting to the stress of that conversation or whatever's going on in my environment better. Now, it's really important. Quality with adaptogens is very important because a lot of countries that grow adaptogenic herbs, they don't have the best, let's say, environment. So there's a lot of mercury or lead in the soil because of what's going on with the pollution in that environment. And of course, the herbs then will take on that pollution because what goes in the soil comes up in the roots. So it's very important you want to use herbs from people who test their herbs independently. So Evan and I, myself, for instance, we test the ashwagandha that we encapsulate, and I've found a couple of times where there's been high levels of lead, and we've had to send the raw material back and use a different manufacturer that vets it. So really important, you don't want to just jump online and get the cheapest adaptogen. Actually, you pay a little bit more to have higher quality and to have the independent analysis done. So that's important. So ashwagandha. And then, of course, just my favorite blend of rhodiola, ginseng, ashwagandha, eleuthero, a little bit of licorice. That's my favorite blend. That's in my Adrenal Revive. I love that because there's enough immune modulating benefits, sex hormone modulating benefits, and I'll go back and forth between those two. And then every now and then, I'll just go and do individual ones. I'll do some gotu kola. I'll do some holy basil. I'll do just some reishi and cordyceps. And I'll just do some individual ones. And I think it's pretty cool. People should biohack and test some individual adaptogens per month and just see how you feel with it, see how you do with it. But for myself personally, I have seen amazing benefits in how I can deal with and adapt to stress. Having seen thousands of patients in my career, I see amazing benefits. And again, it depends. I see a lot of hormonal imbalances, a lot of women with PMS. So we'll use different herbs depending on what's happening there. We may use things like chaste tree or white peony or specific phenotypes of maca that are very helpful. And it's amazing the things that you can do, especially when you're dealing with the woman's cycle that's off. I mean, it can really create a lot of, havoc in her life and mood and such like that. And then obviously it can create menstruation issues, which then create anemic issues. So you can have a whole bunch of things spiral out of control. So big fan of what you can do with these adaptogens from a hormonal, mood, energy, sleep, stress modulating effects.
Yeah, and the good news is, as a general rule, they're pretty synergistic. So the one that I have that's similar to your adrenals, mine's called Adapt, and this is where we've got a little bit of B as in Bravo vitamin added. The cool thing is you can have synergistic benefits. So your average person walking down the street probably knows that B vitamins are good, right? They think B vitamins equals energy. But when you combine adaptogenic herbs with the B vitamins, then you really get the magic happening, because you've got, not only are you helping to fuel the mitochondria with some of the Bs and the nutrients there, vitamin C could be added, but then now you've got the modulating effects with the adaptogens. And then when you throw in amino acids, then you really get amazing benefits. So if you've got nutrients like your vitamins, mixing it with your adaptogens, and then you're throwing in, for example, like a little acetyl L-tyrosine we use, that's when the magic happens, and then you can really just take on life. Now, I do want to say one thing about rhodiola. Rhodiola changed my life. You know, I was depressed all throughout my teenage years, mainly due to my gut issues. I think my mood issues were probably gut and toxicity issues. I remember, I spent a lot of time growing up in my grandma's house, her basement flooded many times. So now, after you and I have talked about this for the last year now, my mold journey, I think I had a lot of mold that was causing me depression too. So it's probably a combination of toxins and gut issues. But one thing that I found really, really early on was rhodiola. And I noticed immediately that my mood was lifted and the clouds that had been over my head just basically disappeared. But the only caveat to it is, if you're somebody who you have an unstable mood, like you're possibly trending more towards bipolar, rhodiola can make you more manic. So that is one adaptogen where I think you have a little caution. So that's where you'd want to work with your practitioner. And then I just want to state something a little differently than the way you've already said, which is about the supplement quality. So part of our clinical practice is we do implement these herbs into clinic, and then we sell these supplements to the public as well. But we're using professional healthcare companies that only manufacture and sell supplements specifically to doctors and healthcare practitioners. So we're not doing what is very common in the nootropic and the adaptogenic herb community, which is contract manufacturing, which is where you've got random supplementsforyou.com in the middle of Florida, and they grab 30 different herbs from China, and then they put them in a bottle and slap your label on it and sell it. That's not what we do at all. We have to have professional grade, made by professional practitioners. Sometimes our formulations are created with the help of other functional medicine people, naturopaths, and on and on and on. And then that stuff is all extremely vetted and tested, because at the end of the day, if we don't get people better, then we can't keep doing what we do. So we have to make sure we have a therapeutic benefit. So if you go on Amazon, for example, and you just type in rhodiola, and you see here some random brand with a label, and it's $9.99, versus you see a professional brand for $29.99, that $9.99 may not be the same. You've got specific alkaloids and parts of the different plants that you need for the active benefit. So if you look at Justin's labels, if you look at my labels, you're going to see the same thing, which is you're going to see a percentage. And that's where the magic happens. So, for example, with rhodiola, you have to have a standardized form that's going to have multiple alkaloids. For example, rosavins is one thing we look for in rhodiola. Not all rhodiola is standardized to have particular percentage of rosavins. With ashwagandha, you've got I think you pronounce it withanolides.
Yep.
That's the active component.
Withanolides, yep.
So I'm just trying to point this out, not to say, hey, we're the best, but we pretty much are with the adaptogenic herbs, because there's nobody else doing professional manufacturing like we are.
100%. Now, really interesting. This is straight from Winston's book. He talks about adaptogens help the body achieve an adaptive response to stress. They increase the body's ability to cope more effectively with stress. They work with the body's reaction to stress and alter the release of stress hormones. When the body's under stress, it is using more energy, and the body's energy supply is being depleted because nutrients are being converted to energy. This can cause fatigue. So what Winston's saying here is that the more stress you perceive, the more you actually deplete other nutrients to make those stress hormones, and then you have less nutrients to run other energy systems in the body, whether it's cardiovascular or gut or neuroendocrine, right? So you kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's like you're increasing your debt over here, therefore you're using a credit card and you're spending outside of your monthly budget. And so one other side benefit that we are getting using adaptogens is we are It's preventing us from using other nutrients in our body to deal with that stress, and now we have a nutrient reserve where we can use for other things such as focus on our job, performance at the gym, energy with our family and friends, which is really cool because we just think about it in the moment, but we forget what that stress does to other nutrients, and now they aren't available to us.
Yeah, well, and people may argue, well, why now? Like my grandparents or my great grandparents, they lived on a farm. Why did they didn't take adaptogens? They weren't just, popping capsules of ashwagandha. Well, we have more toxins than we've ever had. The EPA is not doing their job. You've got flame retardant chemicals and antidepressant drugs, and you've got fluoride and other pharmaceuticals. You've got pesticides and herbicides damaging the gut, which kills bacteria, which then creates nutrient deficiencies and bacterial overgrowth, which then damages the gut barrier. And then you don't have enough nutrients for mitochondria. You've got neurotoxins. You've got air pollution. So to me, the 21st century is the century for adaptogens. I think these could be our saviors to help us cope with the stressors that even just a generation or two ago we didn't have.
110%. Also, we know that we have a lot more oxidative stress in our environment just from pesticides and chemicals that are more readily available, already, just they're kind of inundated in our environment. Winston also highlighted in the book here, very interesting. He says another effect of normal metabolism is the creation of free radicals, right? If the concentration of free radicals exceeds the body's capacity to neutralize them, this can be harmful and can put damage on the mitochondria, the cell's energy powerhouse. He says they are neutralized by antioxidants. So said another way is you're going to have oxidative stress you're going to have free radicals from all this extra stress, okay? And that extra free radicals is going to cause your body's antioxidant reserve to go in overdrive as well. Vitamin C, vitamin E, really important antioxidants. So then your body has to use more antioxidants to deal with the free radicals from that perceived stress. So kind of like the nutrients getting depleted up, we're also depleting a lot of our antioxidants to deal with the free radicals from that perceived stress. So it's pretty cool.
And we measure this too, right? This is not just stuff you're spouting out of a book. This is stuff that we verified thousands of times when we're looking at the various testing we run. For example, organic acids testing, I would say 90% of the time or more, we're seeing vitamin C levels burned out. We're seeing vitamin B as in Bravo low. We're seeing nutrients across the board low. So this is not just theory, this is proof. I mean, we've got the data of these labs, and people, even if they're trying really hard, they're eating whole foods, paleo template, they're still nutrient depleted and they still need help. They're still burning the candle at their job, and so they need adaptogens. Here's one question just for people listening on the podcast that didn't make it to YouTube. Justin hosts these videos live on his YouTube channel, so make sure you're checking that out. Just type in Justin Health on YouTube and you'll find it. So that way you can join us, and if you want to chime in live, you can. But there was one question here from Dennis. He said, can adaptogens help with social anxiety? The answer, of course, is 100% yes. Specifically, I would focus on more calming adaptogens, but possibly mixing it with more stimulating. So like an ashwagandha rhodiola combo, that would probably be an awesome social anxiety stack. But I would often use amino acids there too. So we'd want to figure out, why is the social anxiety happening, right? There's probably an underlying thing there. And then, of course, you could use the nutrients as kind of a support.
Yeah, it just depends. Are you more socially anxious because your HPA access is just an overdrive and then just calming that down helps? Or is there some kind of subconscious trauma that needs to be resolved? Then we'd use a combination of EMDR, EFT, and NLP to address any root cause stuff, right? While we still use the adaptogens to calm down that fight or flight response. So we do both. If there's a stronger connection to a root cause, then we do those techniques that I just mentioned. If not, then we just address the hormonal and neurochemical milieu underneath the surface.
Yeah, and then just taking the question a little further. So is the social anxiety, could it be from self-confidence issues or self-esteem issues, which would be related to neurotransmitter issues? So for example, if you have low serotonin, you're going to be more prone to social anxiety. You're typically going to have lower self-esteem. You're going to be more of a worrier. So we may address that, and we would measure that on organic acids testing. And then what about the skin? Like, what if your skin is part of the reason you're socially anxious, because you feel like you don't look good enough or something like that. So then it becomes, well, why is the skin bad? Is it the gut? Is it the diet? So that's why we love doing these podcasts, to try to zoom in on stuff, but you always have to zoom out too and focus on the whole picture.
110%. And then a couple other things I wanted to highlight. So we're talking about connecting things to kind of more theoretical, but we want to also connect the theoretical into reality. So Evan kind of highlighted the organic acid testing. So we're actually testing the adrenals. Like, I'm running a hormonal panel to look at the cortisol rhythm, to look at that, how that cortisol fluctuates throughout the day. When we start to see HPA axis issues, we start to see a disruption in the cortisol rhythm. So instead of that nice high to low to lower to lowest kind of gentle ski slope taper, we start to see either a flattening, or we start to see irregularity in the rhythm throughout the day. We also are going to run organic acids that will look at catecholamines, whether it's vanylmandrolate that looks at adrenaline, or homovanillate, which looks at dopamine, or we'll look at 5-hydroxyindoloacetate, which looks at serotonin. We'll look at kinourinate or xanthourinate to look at B6. We'll also look at 8-hydroxy-2-deoxyguanosine or phenylacetic acid to look at oxidative stress. So again, these are, really big words. They're kind of foreign. These are organic acids, and they give us a window into the metabolic demand of what the stress is doing to these nutrient pathways. And so from that, we can come in there and we can create targeted supplement programs that support these specific nutrient deficiencies. But the difference is, we're not just trying to give you supplements, we're trying to fix the underlying root cause. So if there's poor digestion or food allergens, we're fixing it. If there's poor sleep or stress management, or blood sugar instability during the day, that has to be fixed too. Blood sugar is a big one. Most people are on this blood sugar roller coaster ride where they're constantly having a catecholamine hormonal rush every time this blood sugar is going up and down, right? On the high side, it's insulin. On the low side, it's adrenaline and cortisol. And then we're in this insulin, adrenaline, cortisol, glucagon, insulin, adrenaline, cortisol, glucagon roller coaster. That's very energy depleting. Like Winston talks about the B vitamins, the nutrients, the antioxidants. So we have to get to the root cause, and it's not just giving you a bunch of supplements. That may be part of it, but we got to have the big picture where we connect the symptoms upstream to the body's systems: hormonal, gut, infection, detox, nutrients, mitochondria, and then also connect it to the underlying stressors, physical, chemical, emotional, that may have gotten the ball rolling to begin with. So we got to go upstream, above, below, inside, out.
Yep, and you could take all the ashwagandha in the world, but if you're eating gluten-free muffins for breakfast and that's it, and you're going to have blood sugar problems, you're going to have mood issues. And I don't care how many adaptogens you take. So, people listening to this, they may think, okay, now I'm just going to go out and buy all these adaptogens. Maybe not. We like you to implement these things with a clinical picture and a clinical framework, as Justin kind of outlined, because you want to be more targeted. I promise. This whole supplement graveyard that I talk about, people building up this supplement graveyard, it's not a good idea, and you're going to spend much more money in the long run if you're just buying this and buying that and trying this and trying that. You need to figure out what is underneath the hood. So that blood sugar issue is so critical, and if you don't address that, man, I tell you, you're going to be angry. You're going to have a short fuse. You're going to get mad at your kids when you're having a blood sugar crisis. So getting that under control, and then on top of that, using adaptogens to support you is how we would do it. But this is all within that clinical framework. So 99.9% of you all listening, you're not doing that. You're just trying this, trying that, but you've got no framework. So you really need the testing to see what are you up against. And that way for example, you may use this herb if it's a low cortisol. We may use this herb if it's a high cortisol. What if it's an inverse pattern? Now we've got to start to, let's say, raise morning cortisol but lower evening cortisol. So there's a timing to this too. Mm-hmm. There's a whole circadian rhythm, time of the day framework as well. It's not just licorice. Licorice needs to be done at the right time. So then you get into timing. So once you add all the different layers on, this is why it's best to hire us. I mean, that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, so definitely diving in deeper and quantifying everything, and then measuring it, and then coming back in 3 to 6 months or 9 months later and reevaluating it. Yeah, I 100% like that. Live question here that came in. I want to get your take on it. I have my opinion too. I'll get your take first. So there's different adaptogenic mushrooms that we talked about, like reishi and cordyceps, right? What's your take on using those medicinal mushrooms as adaptogens if you have candida? Would that make your candida worse, Or is the benefit from those medicinal mushrooms outweighing any potential candida effects?
I would say in the case of cordyceps specifically, I don't see why it would be a big deal. I mean, there's been a lot of benefit on cordyceps regarding the adrenal system. So to me, if you're thinking adrenal stress, higher cortisol potentially damaging the gut barrier, aka creating increased intestinal permeability, creating leaky gut, then leading to more bacterial overgrowth and candida, to me, I think it's a no-brainer to use adaptogens. And you and I do this every single day, all day in the clinic. We use adaptogens during these gut issue protocols. So I would say, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my general recommendation is in alignment with yours. Is as long as you can add it in and you're not seeing any symptoms getting worse, meaning if you have specific candida symptoms in and around bloating or gas or white-coated tongue or jock itch or athlete's foot or tinea versicolor rash or cognitive issues from the brain fog from the candida, and it's not getting worse, I think it's okay. Of course, I lean on some of the other, let's just say, fungi-free adaptogens first, but if we have a benefit there, that's totally cool. Another question came in I want to highlight. Is there, someone was in, to be clear, is there an adrenal leaky gut parasite issue? And then what's the best test to look for this? So off the bat for me, we're running a GI map test to look for gut issues, whether it's bacteria, parasite, or candida. But we're also running an organic acid test because I've seen time and time a lot of systemic candida issues that may be outside of the gut will show up on an organic acid test as diarabinitol, and that, or diarabinose, and that's a fungal metabolite that comes out in the urine. So that can give us a bigger window to a more systemic, deeper fungal issue. So it's good to look at both.
Yep.
What are your thoughts, Evan?
My thoughts are with organic acids, I'm also running mycopanels almost every single time now. I am looking into mold toxin quite a bit. It's rare that I find someone negative, and I'm finding that mold toxin is contributing to candida overgrowth. So I'm also adding in a lot of that and a lot of binder support too. So a protocol, once you get all the proper labs run on someone, the protocol may look like this. Maybe some adaptogenic herbs to support the HPA axis, possibly some micronutrient multi-support, possibly omegas or some type of anti-inflammatory herbal protocol, and then the specific detox and or gut work. So anti-parasitic, antifungal, antimicrobial herbs, liver support, binders, possibly digestive enzymes. And of course, that's all according to what's going on. If they're too inflamed, they might not be able to do HCl, so you got to heal the gut first. So, obviously it's too complicated for us to just say, hey, here's exactly the protocol you people listening need to do. There's 1,000 different ways to skin a cat depending on what's going on your lab. So,
100%.
Get the data. You got to get the data.
And then just my last comment is, hey, this is all about the top 5 adaptogens. So what are the top 5? My number 1, ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is number 1, just for overall stress and sleep. Mood, ginseng, eleuthero, excellent for mood. Number 3, for sex hormone modulation, we're using chaste or Vitex. And we may also throw in some maca in there or white peony. For immune, we may be throwing in reishi or astragalus or cordyceps for immune, which is very helpful. And then also for additional sleep, we may be throwing in something like a holy basil or something, a very calming kind of adaptogen, a go-to cola. And we may also throw in licorice depending on cortisol rhythm aberrations during the day. High or low fluctuations, we may balance off some of those low levels of cortisol with licorice. Just be careful you don't have high blood pressure already because that can increase that. That's kind of my top 5 on there. Evan, do you concur? Do you want to add or amend anything?
I mean, I love them. I mean, honestly, if you ask me, it depends. My answer or my list is going to depend on the time of year a lot too. Like if I'm doing a lot more hiking and such in the summertime, I'm probably going to hit the rhodiola harder. If it's more winter, less sunlight, just more stress in general from the winter, the cold temperatures. Some of these adaptogenic herbs have benefits in regards to how you adapt to cold weather. So when we say adapting, we're not just talking emotional stress, your bad boss or your spouse. No, we're talking literally you can adapt to colder temperatures, so the cold.
Which herb is that?
You.
Which herb is that? The cold one.
Rhodiola can help.
Great.
Yeah. So if you just look up like cold tolerance or cold intolerance adaptogens, I believe rhodiola is number 1, but I'm rarely doing them in isolation these days. So I would just tell you as a whole, when I've got a full protocol loaded up, I could be out in 5 degrees and it doesn't bother me as much as it used to. And your average person who's going to say, I'm freezing to death, I'm at 5 degrees and I feel okay. So we got to wrap this thing up. But
let's do it.
We'll do more on adaptogens. If you guys love this, please give us your feedback and review the podcast on iTunes. We need your help so we can stay on top of the charts, spreading this functional medicine knowledge to the masses. So please review our podcast. It takes like 2 minutes. We will love you forever. So go to justinhealth.com and then /iTunes. That should, or if you're just listening on the podcast app, you should be able to click write a review, give us the stars you think it deserves, and click send. And then my show, it's the same link. Or if you're on the Evan Brand Show on your podcast app, click write a review, give us some stars, let us know how we do. And then if you want to reach out, we can help you make a customized protocol where you're not spending all of your money guessing. The philosophy is test, don't guess. So you can reach out to Justin clinically. That is justinhealth.com. We work with people around the world. My website, evanbrand.com. And we'll be back next week for more fun.
Excellent, Evan. Well, you did a great job closing things up. You guys have a phenomenal week, and we'll be back. Take care. Bye now.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.